Okay.
Okay, so Julia Flannery, conservation agent, and assistant town planner from the town of Maynard. We're doing this Beaver Brigade is what we've called it. Basically, what we're looking for is we started this project about a year ago, and it seems to actually be working. It's pretty experimental, and in order to actually be able to say yes that it is working, it is discouraging beavers from being in certain locations, we need to collect some data. And so that's where ORS stepped in and said they would help, and all of you said that you would help along too. So um, I'm going to go over, I have a brief presentation. It's mainly just pictures, and kind of what we're looking for. And then my plan is to see how many people would be interested after we kind of talk about what this looks like, and then do more of an in-person, like we all kind of go and gather the data, do a data collection together, um, and take a look at some trees. That's one thing I'm with beavers and beaver activity. It looks really different, and it's also a lot more fun to be in the field and actually looking at these trees. So I'm going to show you some pictures, but knowing that we're going to keep this pretty brief today just to see what the interest is, if this is something that you would actually be interested in helping with. And then whoever is interested, we will have probably in the next like 2 weeks, Heather, maybe we'll have um, an in-person orientation. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, cool. Okay, so I briefly mentioned that at the beginning that this kind of started with some high school students who were interested in doing some projects. And I had seen like of looking at beaver mitigation in a very cheap way, trying to do some research because we're really struggling in the town of Maynard, particularly. We're very densely populated, and beavers are great animals, engineers of the forest, very cool. But unfortunately, they like to dam things up and flood people out. And so we have a couple of beaver families that have been wreaking havoc on not only private property, but town property as well. And um, we have tried trapping is basically the method in which the a licensed trapper will come in and remove the beaver and euthanize it. The reason why we don't relocate beavers is because it actually ends up being much more harmful to them. If you've ever relocated or seen videos of a relocated beaver or raccoon or any of those kind of larger rodent type animals, they're very territorial, and they need to go back to the place where that they consider home. And when they can't find that, they kind of go crazy. They starve themselves. It's very sad to watch. So the humane thing to do is euthanize. Um, so what are our other options? Well, so there's trapping. Then there's also what we call beaver deceivers, which is like the best phrase, right? So beaver deceivers are basically like fenced. Um, there's all different kinds, but a lot of the ones that you probably see around here are these like chain link fences that are at culverts or at areas where beavers like to build dams. And they discourage the beaver from building a dam there because beavers really like 90-degree angles. Again, engineers of the forest, they don't like to build dams on a 45-degree angle. So you see these kind of like pointy chain link fences, and that's what they're there for. They're not there to catch debris. They're there to discourage beavers from trying to build dams. They're expensive though, and they're expensive to maintain and to install. So, anyways, that all brings me to doing a lot of research on some alternative means of beaver discouragement, or trying to get them to like not be in these highly dense areas. And I found this painting method. So these are two of my students that I had last year who did a lot of the painting that you see around town that you'll be looking at. And basically, it's a latex paint. We picked brown because we didn't want to be like overly, obnoxious. We wanted to kind of have the trees blend in a little bit. Um, you take this, you take this latex paint, you mix a coarse sand, and I had the kids do kind of an experiment of how much sand to paint. It's a ratio that you kind of have to do on the fly, because depending on what type of sand you get, it can either make it hard as a rock or make it too, the sand will dissolve and just sink to the bottom. So they were able to kind of figure out what that concoction is. Basically, they always have these little red buckets of paint, and then they had some sand on them. So they would kind of mix it as they went, and get a good idea of how much sand to put in it. And the reason why this works is because, well, that's what's experimental. They don't really know why the beavers don't want to chew on these trees that are painted. The theory is that it's because the sand creates a rocky texture and fools them into thinking that, oh, wait, this isn't a tree, this is a rock. Because if you think about bark, that's a very thick material, and their teeth are insanely strong. So they could chew through this. It's not like they can't chew through the sand paint mixture, but their tongue and their taste buds are all like, wait a second, it confuses them. So that's the idea. Here's my students again. So what we did was we painted, and here's him mixing that paint, as you can see. We painted like 12 trees, I think, in total, in this one area called Ice House Landing. And he was only able to observe them for about a month before, his project was over and he graduated. And I wasn't able to get any students, to be interested in doing this. So that's where you guys all come in. So quickly in here, you can see, so this is called Ice House Landing. If you're familiar with the town of Maynard, this is Winter Street, and this is our DPW yard. So these yellow dots, I'm going to start with first. So this yellow dot up here represents there's a beaver den, and it's quite a large beaver den. Heather and I were actually out there the other day, and forgot to get a picture of it, but there's been multiple families who have moved in there, so it's like it's very reinforced. The current family we think is we actually don't think it's one single male who's living there right now. About 2 seasons ago, we saw up to 3 beavers in there. They moved out by themselves. We're not really sure why, but they left their den, and other beavers, we call them the lazy ones, like to move in. Why not? And the reason why they love this spot is because they can dam up the rail trail right here. So this is that other yellow dot. That's their dam. It's perfect, very small culvert. It's a box shape, so perfect for them to dam up pretty easily with not a lot of material. And the reason why we don't like that is because they end up damming up this area, which we call Thanksgiving Pond. And that will flood up into here. There's barely any difference in topography. So this is where we keep, some hazardous materials, some salt, all these things that we don't want to go into the water, mainly salt. And particularly in the winter, we keep everything in the salt shed, but we have a lot of movement around the yard. And so there's just a salt everywhere, and trying to contain it is difficult. Now imagine the water level of this pond is now almost all the way over to here. You can actually see in this picture where it's wet. That's where the water likes to pool. And it's from it going from the pond, plus rainwater, kind of that whole mixture. So it's not ideal. Also, we have all of these private properties back here, and they will start to flood as well. And then when it gets really bad, it'll get up onto the rail trail. So that's kind of why we don't really want them up in this area. We'd rather them be downriver or actually back here, which you can't really see because it's off the screen. But this is the other side of this water body is the Aspen Wildlife Refuge, which has a lot of beaver populations in it. And there's actually a den down there, and those beavers have a different dam. So, you know, we want to try to discourage the use of this area as much as possible for damming, but also we don't want to take away their habitat. I mean, they were here first. So it's trying to find that balance. And that's why we started painting over here, just because we see the most activity. So these red dots represent painted trees. So this area is very easy to get to. There's a parking lot right here, public parking lot. And then you cross the rail trail and down, there's a nice paved path and a beautiful park that we are currently going to be redoing. So it's going to be a little under construction this spring, but hopefully it won't be too disruptive. And then there's actually a trail that keeps going all the way along here and then loops back up onto the rail trail. And so all these trees are very easy to see. Once you know what you're looking for, very easy to see from the trail. And some of them you do have to kind of navigate and weave a little bit off trail to observe. So that's our first location. And then our second location is on Rockland Ave. So Rockland Ave is in the north of Maynard, right on the border of Acton. Actually, Acton's line is somewhere around here. So this is all, again, conservation land owned. So the places I'm showing you right now are all publicly owned. I should make that clear. This area has had a beaver problem for quite some time. And I wouldn't say problem because we kind of let them do their thing until it gets really, really bad. And really, really bad is flooding the road. So if you're familiar with the area, there's the Rockland Ave trails. So this yellow line is a trail. And so when you come off of Rockland Ave and come down this trail, you can kind of keep going through the trees. And then we had some Boy Scouts do some painting last spring. I think they only ended up painting about 8. So these are kind of an estimate of where they are. They are down here though. And that's more to just see. This one is not as much of like, we're not so much discouraging the habitat as a whole, like we are on Ice House Landing, but we are seeing like, okay, let's put these painted trees where we see a ton of beaver activity, and see if it starts to work. So, you know, we're not painting every tree. We're painting the ones that are usually within 3 to 5 inches. So an ideal tree to come down for a beaver, or ones that provide a significant amount of shade covering. So it's very arbitrary when you try to go and decide which trees to paint. Because again, you're just kind of guessing about like, okay, if I'm a beaver, which ones would I go after? It also, beavers are, again, fascinating animals because they have different taste buds depending on their family. So like, for example, I grew up in, Rhode Island thinking that they never went for conifers. And then I just thought that was like a beaver rule. Then I learned through a lot of this work that there are beavers that will go after conifers. Some of them like birch more. Some of them like the dogwoods. Some, they go after, like us, have their favorites. And different families will have like different favorites. So that's why we see such an array of chew marks. So I'm going to come back to this, but for example, on this picture, this is a mixture of an old chew and a new chew. So we painted the tree behind it because we saw activity. So that was kind of how I had my students go through here. But you can see here that there was some chewing. They were able to get the tree down. It died. This chewing looks at least a few years old. But then right here, you can see a beaver came up and was like, oh, wait, let me try to take this tree. Now it's like halfway down. Again, very weird behavior, or what I thought was weird behavior, which is actually pretty normal, is beavers will take their, other people's work. They have no problem with being like, oh, that tree's half dead. Perfect. I'll take that. Or, it got stuck. And so then they go and try to take what they can get. So yeah, that's my kind of beaver spiel. Does anyone have any questions at this point? So what we're looking for, volunteer duties is basically, be sure to sign the volunteer form, because it's basically just a liability form that allows you to work on conservation land. So tracking the activity around those painted mitigation locations. And so you would either get assigned or choose a location. Right now, we obviously only have two. The goal is that this summer we actually get some more locations, but you would, follow a Google form that you could either, write notes and then fill out later on the computer. And you would take pictures of the area and then upload those to the Google form. So perfect example is this type of picture. So, you saw some new chewing activity near the tree at Ice House Landing. And that's basically it. Just, name, date, picture, and what activity you saw. That could also be, what are you hearing? So did you physically see the beaver? And then you kind of, if you take a minute and you listen, did you hear any of the beaver splashing? Most of the time, it's really hard to see a beaver. Also, we have river otters, and from the shore, it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between a beaver and a river otter. But otters don't slap. They don't have the types of tails to slap. Beavers have those nice, long, flat tails. And if they're slapping, then that either means that they're getting in a fight with a fellow beaver, or you're too close, and they would like you to go away. So I think the biggest takeaway is this is, a wild animal. Don't approach it. If you hear the slapping, take their warning and slowly back away from that area. It's definitely not like, don't worry about getting the picture if that's what it comes down to. But making sure that we record that type of activity is really important. So like that would be like, I ran into an aggressive beaver, wasn't able to take a picture because it started yelling at me. So the other things you could do is starting to look for these new activity areas, particularly on public property. So if you look at, and I'll send out a trail map that I've been kind of working on. I haven't fully published, so take it for what it is. It's on our GIS, so I guess technically it's published, but there's a few other locations that we have along the river. One of them being off of Concord Street, down along, it's called the Blue-Green Trail. So half of it actually goes into Acton. I haven't seen any beaver activity back there, but that's another place that we could start looking for some. Again, I'm not back here all the time, so that's where you guys, who like to go for walks and are already going on these trails could really help us. And the other one is kayaking along the river. So this one is obviously going to be a little bit more difficult. But just another idea of if you are already out on a kayak along the Assabet, and you see an area, definitely like take a picture of it, and that's look at whether or not that's on public property. We can figure out after, but if you're in a kayak, you're not trespassing or anything, you're just observing beaver activity. And then if the activity is found, what we could potentially do if it is on public property or if it is on private and the owners are willing, is apply the sand and paint mixture to those ideal trees. So that second part, again, there's a little bit more there. And Heather and I are still kind of figuring out, like, it's going to depend on how many people are interested and then what this will look like through the summer. My goal is to get this started, kind of it be more of an autonomous item that at least we start to track some activity. And then, if any of you are like really gung-ho, find that new area and really want to paint, then we can go for that too. It's really what you guys want to do. So yeah, that's my spiel.
I do want to say this with this new experimental method, or the newish, is non-invasive, so we're not having to trap them. And ideally, you really don't want to have to euthanize a beaver to move it, although there are situations where that does happen. But what we're aiming for is to get some long-term data, so over several years, to see how effective this practice is, because if it is really quite effective, then more and more people can implement it and, might save some relationships between humans and beavers. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.
Yeah, there is a beaver lodge along the Blue-Green Trail. It's where you detour up onto the side of the water treatment facility in Acton and then come down closer to the river. It's difficult. It's easy to see now if you know where to look.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult when the foliage is out. But we observed a young beaver swimming along the river there, and then he disappeared. And that's how we came across the lodge. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot of activity that in terms of chewing on trees right along there, but the lodge is still in pretty good shape.
Okay, so yeah, that may be an area that we can start to look for activity, even if that is just the actual beavers themselves. They chew on trees for two different reasons. Some of them they're eating, and some of them are using for building material. It's a very interesting area because it's almost like a pond back there.
Yeah.
With the Powder Mill Dam.
Yeah.
It stops acting like a river. So I think they use the already made dam as like, oh, this is perfect. We don't have to do a ton of work and we get to reap the benefits.
Yeah, I have a kind of a philosophical question. I mean, it's useful to know where all the beaver activity is and we're talking about only in Maynard, right? For this project?
For this aspect of the project, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
But hopefully we're hoping to spread to other towns.
I would probably have kind of mixed feelings if we were always responding to every landowner complaint about beavers by discouraging or removing the beavers. So I have I'm willing to kind of be eyes and ears, but I do have some mixed feelings about what landowners are willing to put up with, and because, as you said, the beavers were here first until we trapped them all out, and now they're back.
Yes, so they are indeed overpopulated. So when it comes to trapping, yes, there is a lot of there's a lot of feelings and philosophical questions there. I think what really the goal of this project, and that's why we're not painting every single tree. The goal of this project is really to discourage in very particular areas. So that's why even with that Rockland Ave one, it's almost like, well, let's just kind of use this as an experimental area to see if the painting actually does discourage them from chewing, and not so much discourage them from being there. Whereas the Ice House Landing, the town has trapped families for decades there. It's a significant spot, and a huge reason why is because they trap, but they don't take down the den. So you're like, well, you left a free house. So you're actually attracting them to come. So that's a different project that I'm kind of working on the side, is these like long-term management and mitigation. When it comes to private owners, we don't have a ton of say on what they can do. I mean, they can go out and pay a trapper to go trap. They do have to get permits, and obviously those trappers need to be licensed. Right now is the other reason why we're doing this project now, not only because it's nice weather, but is also because trapping season ended April 15th. So if you need to trap a beaver between April 15th and I think October 4th, you need to get a Board of Health permit. So you really need to prove that the beaver is risking public health and safety. When it's not in trapping season, when it is in trapping season, you do still need a permit, but just from the state, and making sure that it's licensed. So there's definitely levels of mitigation there, and that's not a part of this project. We're not trying to encourage trapping or encourage private owners to go down that road, but we are hoping that if we can prove that this is an effective method, that we end up being like, hey, if you do have a real problem, let the beavers do their thing if you're not getting flooded out. But if you are starting to get flooded out and it's really starting to affect your property value and the public health and safety, then here's a great alternative that, has no negative effects.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Ken.
Yeah, Julie, I have a question on the Rockland Ave one. What constitutes a beaver issue on that one? In that, or actually in general, because obviously beavers are responsible for more creation of habitat than they are destruction. So in that Rockland area, Rockland Ave, which is pretty, there isn't much around there, but I was wondering what constitutes a problem there.
So like I mentioned, the Rockland Ave is really the only time it becomes a problem is when they flood out the road. So they have we give them a very, like, it's really only when you can no longer pass. And that's because, there's people who live down there, and we need to be able to get emergency vehicles. And we also have some wells, our water wells. So,
okay, I just wasn't aware that it ever flooded, because I've been here about 7 years. Yeah.
So there is a beaver deceiver on the culvert that runs under that road. That was put in, I want to say, about 8 years ago. The beavers actually in that area, we kind of let them do their thing. They really, like you said, there's just like a swath of land that they've kind of created this wetland in, and they've been there for quite some time. Where they actually do the most damage is in Acton. So if you're familiar with where the paper store corporate office is and Blossom Station daycare, that the swamp actually kind of curves around and goes in there. So when they start damming up that area, they can negatively affect that one parcel. And so it's more of like there's just so many in that area that it's more of Acton's problem so much than ours. We let ours kind of do their thing until they really flood. But for the most part, the past couple of years, they've been able to just clear out. It's not even like they're building dams. It's just those beaver deceivers end up causing a lot of debris to get caught under the culvert. So we haven't had a problem so far, but we do know that there's a significant amount of activity. So maybe they'd be interested in being our guinea pigs, if you will.
Okay,
and seeing
okay,
if
yeah,
they will-
sorry, I came in late to the conversation. I was actually doing some conservation work, but
No worries.
no, but I mean, you might have already said about beavers that they are pre-programmed genetically to it drives them crazy to hear flowing water, so they have to jam it. I mean, they have to. They have to
Yeah.
block. They can't help it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So Rockland, Rockland Ave is definitely more of an experiment, and less about really pushing them out. And then like there are a few other properties where we know we have beavers, but they are on private property. And so that's where, I don't want to encourage those private property owners to go and invest money or time into, I mean, not that this is a lot of money, but and saying like this will guarantee that the beavers will leave your property alone, because we don't know.
right.
What we do know is that the alternative is a lot of times you see the metal cages around trees. I hate metal cages because they have to get removed, or else the tree will grow into it, and it can cause significant damage to trees, and then you have trees falling, and just it causes more problems than it solves. And they're also expensive. They're expensive to purchase and to install. So when those riverfront homeowners come to me and ask me right now, like, what are our options? That's currently the method that's recommended. But I do try to warn them, like, keep an eye on the tree, make sure you loosen it every year, and go through all these things. If I can recommend this, then it'd just be so much easier. Any other questions about volunteering or beavers in general?
So I will send a follow-up email. I did record this meeting, so if there was someone else, I know there were a few people who said they wouldn't be able to make it. I will send this out when it's ready, because it takes a little bit to get uploaded to the cloud, so that you can send it around. So we would really love to have some volunteers to do this, because having high schoolers do it is great, but they tend to graduate. So we need more long-term data collection to see if this is a good method, which it's got potential to be. So I will send a follow-up email, and then if you have any questions in the meantime, I will copy you with Julia's address. Julia is actually going on maternity leave in July. So it'll mainly be, I think, myself and maybe someone at the town level coordinating this. So what we'd like to do next step-wise would be to get out to the site and just do a little bit of a demo to show you what we're doing, and maybe paint a tree. So yeah, so thanks so much for joining us. And if you have any questions, go ahead and send those to me, and I'll send out the follow-up email with the information when it's ready.
Awesome.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much,
Heather.
everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.